We have been told retirement withdrawals are simple, but the closer you look, the less simple they feel. Most people think the hard part is saving enough money, yet spending it wisely is often more emotionally difficult. A withdrawal strategy is really your plan for turning savings into income without running out too soon. And that sounds technical until you realise it decides how calm or fearful retirement will actually feel. Some retirees withdraw too slowly and deny themselves a life they worked decades to afford. Others withdraw too quickly because the market feels strong and the future still seems far away. So this is not just about math, because it is also about regret, safety, and control. The first belief to question is that there must be one perfect withdrawal rule for everyone. There is not, because retirement is shaped by health, age, market returns, taxes, and family needs. Still, there are a few core strategies that almost every retiree ends up using in some form. The most famous is the 4% rule, which many people treat like a guaranteed promise. In plain language, it means withdrawing 4% in year one and adjusting later for inflation. It became popular because it offered something emotionally powerful, which was a sense of order. But even a useful rule can become dangerous when people forget the assumptions behind it. It was based on historical market periods, not a guarantee for your exact future. It also assumes a portfolio mix, a time horizon, and a willingness to stay invested through fear. That matters because two retirees with the same savings can need completely different withdrawal rates. Someone retiring at 60 may need their money to stretch much longer than someone retiring at 70. Someone with a pension can withdraw more confidently than someone relying on investments alone. And someone supporting adult children may face a very different retirement than they expected. So the first real strategy is not a percentage, but knowing what kind of retirement you actually have. That means separating essential spending from optional spending before choosing any withdrawal method. Essential spending includes housing, food, utilities, insurance, and the healthcare costs you cannot avoid. Optional spending includes travel, gifts, hobbies, upgrades, and the lifestyle extras that feel flexible. This distinction matters because flexible spending gives you room to adapt when markets disappoint. Without that flexibility, every downturn feels like a threat to your identity and safety. Now let us walk through the broad families of withdrawal strategies, because each one solves a different fear. The first family is fixed withdrawals, where you take the same amount or same percentage consistently. The second family is dynamic withdrawals, where you adjust based on markets and spending needs. The third family is bucket strategies, where money is separated by time horizon and purpose. The fourth family is guardrail strategies, where spending rises or falls within preset boundaries. And the fifth family is income flooring, where guaranteed income covers essential living costs first. Many retirees assume they must choose just one of these, but that is rarely how life works. The strongest plans often combine several strategies to protect both lifestyle and peace of mind. For example, a retiree may use Social Security as a floor and investments for flexible extras. Another may keep 2 years of cash, then rebalance the rest through market cycles. Another may start conservatively and increase spending later if returns are kind. That is why retirement withdrawals are less like a single rule and more like a living framework. The fear underneath all of this is understandable, because no one wants to become a burden later. But there is another fear people rarely say out loud, which is dying with too much unused life. That quiet fear is why some people keep searching for the safest possible number forever. Safety matters, but too much caution can quietly turn retirement into prolonged financial hesitation. A good withdrawal strategy should protect your future without making your present feel emotionally starved. So before we compare the methods, remember the goal is not perfection under every scenario. The goal is a plan sturdy enough for uncertainty and gentle enough for real life. In the next section, we will start with fixed withdrawals and why they comfort some retirees. We will also see why that same simplicity can become risky when inflation or market losses arrive together. Because the easiest strategy to understand is not always the easiest strategy to live with. And once you see that clearly, the rest of retirement planning starts to feel much more honest. You planned for the future, but you are also allowed to build a life inside the present. We often assume fixed withdrawals feel safest because predictability gives a sense of control. But that stability can quietly ignore what markets and inflation are actually doing around you. A fixed withdrawal strategy means taking a consistent amount or percentage regardless of market conditions. The most common version is the 4% rule, adjusted yearly for inflation. It feels structured, which is why many retirees are drawn to it early on. You know what you can spend, and you do not have to rethink decisions constantly. For people who value routine, this can reduce decision fatigue in a meaningful way. But the hidden risk appears when markets decline early in retirement. This is called sequence of returns risk, and it matters more than most people expect. If losses happen early while you are withdrawing, your portfolio has less chance to recover. Even if average returns look normal later, the damage has already been done. That is why two retirees with identical averages can end up with very different outcomes. Fixed withdrawals do not adapt, which can make them fragile during unpredictable periods. Still, they are not wrong. They are simply incomplete without flexibility. Some retirees adjust by lowering their starting percentage slightly below 4%. Others keep a buffer of cash so they are not forced to sell investments during downturns. This is where fixed strategies start blending into more adaptive approaches. Now let us move into dynamic withdrawal strategies, which respond to real conditions. Dynamic withdrawals adjust your spending based on portfolio performance and market behavior. This approach accepts uncertainty instead of trying to smooth it away completely. For example, you might spend more after strong market years and reduce spending after losses. This creates a natural alignment between your lifestyle and your financial reality. One version is the percentage method, where you withdraw a fixed percent each year. The amount changes because your portfolio value changes, not because the rule changes. This reduces the chance of running out of money, but introduces income variability. And that variability can feel uncomfortable, especially for retirees who prefer stability. Another version is the decision-based method, where withdrawals respond to predefined conditions. For example, you may reduce spending by 10% after a market decline of 15%. This introduces structure while still allowing for adaptation. Dynamic strategies tend to preserve portfolios longer because they adjust during stress. But they also require emotional discipline, which is often underestimated. Spending less during downturns can feel like going backwards after years of hard work. That is why flexibility in lifestyle becomes just as important as flexibility in math. The retirees who succeed with dynamic withdrawals often have adjustable expectations. They are willing to delay upgrades, reduce travel, or shift plans temporarily. And in return, they gain a higher probability of long-term sustainability. Now, here is something important that is rarely discussed clearly. Most retirees naturally drift into a hybrid of fixed and dynamic behavior anyway. They may start with a fixed plan, then adjust when something feels uncomfortable. That instinct is not a mistake. It is actually a form of adaptive intelligence. The goal is not to eliminate adjustments, but to make them intentional instead of reactive. Because reacting emotionally often leads to selling low and freezing spending too late. While planned adjustments feel calmer and more aligned with long-term thinking. So instead of asking which strategy is best, it may be better to ask which stress you can handle. Do you prefer stable income with higher long-term risk, or flexible income with more daily awareness? There is no perfect answer, only trade-offs that match different personalities and priorities. In the next section, we will explore bucket strategies and why they feel emotionally reassuring. Because sometimes how money is organized matters just as much as how it is withdrawn. And that shift in perspective can quietly reduce anxiety without changing total wealth. You planned carefully for tomorrow, and you are still allowed to feel steady today. We often believe organizing money differently does not change outcomes, but it can change how retirement feels. Bucket strategies are less about math optimization and more about emotional stability during uncertainty. The idea is simple. You divide your portfolio into separate buckets based on time horizon. Each bucket serves a different purpose. which makes spending decisions feel clearer and less stressful. The first bucket usually holds cash or very safe assets for short-term spending needs. This might cover 1 to 3 years of essential expenses depending on your comfort level. The second bucket contains moderate risk investments designed for the next several years. The third bucket holds long-term growth assets, typically equities that may fluctuate but grow over time. This structure creates a mental separation between money you need now and money you need later. And that separation can reduce panic when markets decline. Instead of seeing your entire portfolio drop, you see that your short-term bucket remains stable. That allows you to avoid selling long-term investments at unfavorable times. Over time, you refill the short-term bucket by selling from the growth bucket during stronger markets. This creates a natural rhythm of spending and replenishment. It is not necessarily more efficient mathematically, but it can be more sustainable emotionally. And emotional sustainability often determines whether a strategy actually works in real life, because even the best plan fails if it cannot be followed consistently. However, bucket strategies are not completely passive. They require periodic rebalancing and thoughtful decisions about when to refill buckets. Without that discipline, the structure can slowly drift away from its intended purpose. Now let us move into guardrail strategies, which introduce boundaries instead of fixed rules. Guardrail strategies set upper and lower limits for how much you can withdraw. If your portfolio performs well, you are allowed to increase spending within a safe range. If performance declines, you reduce spending before the situation becomes dangerous. This creates a feedback system that responds early instead of reacting too late. One well-known version is the Guyton-Klinger guardrail approach. It adjusts withdrawals when portfolio percentages move beyond predefined thresholds. For example, if your withdrawal rate rises above a certain level, you reduce spending slightly. If it falls below another level, you can safely increase spending. This approach balances flexibility with structure in a very practical way. It avoids the rigidity of fixed withdrawals while preventing overly emotional decisions. But it still requires attention because you need to monitor your portfolio regularly. And not everyone wants to stay that engaged throughout retirement. That leads us to another important concept, which is income flooring. Income flooring focuses on securing essential expenses with guaranteed income sources. This might include pensions, annuities, or government benefits like Social Security. The goal is to cover your basic needs without relying on market performance. Once those essentials are covered, the rest of your portfolio can be used more flexibly. This reduces the emotional pressure of market fluctuations significantly because your survival does not depend on whether markets are up or down this year. Many retirees find this approach deeply calming, even if it slightly reduces total returns. That trade-off is often worth it for those who value peace of mind over optimization. And again, most people do not use this in isolation. They combine income flooring with flexible withdrawals for discretionary spending. So instead of choosing one strategy, they layer them to match different types of needs. At this point, you may notice a pattern emerging across all these approaches. The best strategies are not the most rigid or the most aggressive. They are the ones that adapt while still protecting against worst-case scenarios. In the next section, we will break down how retirees actually combine these strategies in practice. Because real retirement rarely follows a single clean formula from start to finish. We often imagine retirement strategies as clean systems, but real life tends to blend them together. Most retirees do not follow a single method. They quietly combine multiple approaches over time. This combination is not confusion, it is adaptation to changing needs and emotions. A common structure starts with income flooring to protect essential living expenses. This creates a base layer of security that does not depend on market performance. On top of that, retirees often use a flexible withdrawal strategy for discretionary spending. This allows them to enjoy good years while naturally adjusting during more difficult periods. Some also incorporate a bucket system to organize how and when money is accessed. This layered approach reduces both financial risk and emotional stress at the same time. Now let us look at how retirees tend to distribute their withdrawals over time. Spending in retirement is rarely flat. even though many plans assume it will be. In reality, spending often follows a pattern, sometimes described as the retirement smile. Early retirement tends to have higher spending due to travel and active lifestyle choices. Mid-retirement spending often stabilizes or declines as routines become simpler. Later years may see increased healthcare costs, even if other expenses decrease. Understanding this pattern helps retirees adjust withdrawal strategies over different phases. For example, some choose higher withdrawals early and reduce them later intentionally. Others remain conservative early and allow spending to rise if investments perform well. There is also a psychological shift that happens after the first 5 to 10 years. Many retirees become more comfortable spending once they see their plan actually working. That initial hesitation often softens as uncertainty becomes lived experience. This is why rigid early restrictions can sometimes be unnecessarily limiting. Now let us introduce a simple breakdown to make these strategies easier to visualize. Roughly speaking, many retirees fall into 3 broad behavioral groups. About 30% prefer stability and lean toward fixed or income-based withdrawals. Another 40% adopt flexible strategies that adjust with markets and lifestyle changes. The remaining 30% use hybrid systems combining buckets, guardrails, and income floors. These are not strict categories, but they reflect how different personalities approach uncertainty. The stability-focused group values predictability and reduced decision-making. The flexible group values adaptability and long-term sustainability. The hybrid group values balance and layered protection across different scenarios. None of these approaches are inherently better. They simply reflect different emotional priorities. This is where retirement planning becomes more personal than mathematical, because your strategy must match not only your finances, but also your tolerance for uncertainty. Another important factor is how often you want to think about money. Some retirees prefer a set-and-forget approach with minimal adjustments. Others are comfortable reviewing and adjusting their plan several times each year. Neither preference is wrong, but it should influence which strategy you choose. Because the best strategy is the one you can follow consistently without constant stress. In the next section, we will explore the most common mistakes retirees make with withdrawals, and more importantly, how small adjustments can prevent those mistakes from becoming costly. Because avoiding errors often matters more than finding the perfect strategy. And once you understand those patterns, your decisions start to feel much more grounded. You prepared for uncertainty, and you are still allowed to feel steady within it. We often think mistakes come from lack of knowledge, but they usually come from emotional pressure. One of the most common mistakes is withdrawing too much during strong market years. When portfolios grow quickly, it creates a false sense of long-term security. This can lead to lifestyle expansion that becomes difficult to reverse later. Another mistake is withdrawing too little out of fear, even when the plan supports more. This often results in delayed experiences and unused financial potential. Many retirees quietly carry this tension between safety and enjoyment. There is also a tendency to react too quickly during market downturns. Reducing spending drastically after losses can create unnecessary stress, while ignoring downturns completely can increase long-term risk. The balance lies in measured adjustments rather than sudden reactions. Another overlooked mistake is failing to revisit the plan over time. Retirement is not static, and neither are your needs or priorities. Health changes, family dynamics shift, and expenses evolve in subtle ways. A plan that worked 5 years ago may need gentle adjustments today. Some retirees also underestimate the impact of inflation over long periods. Even modest inflation can quietly reduce purchasing power over decades. This is why strategies that ignore inflation often feel stable but become fragile later. Taxes are another area where small oversights can create larger consequences. Different accounts are taxed differently, which affects how much you actually keep. Strategic withdrawals across account types can extend portfolio life meaningfully. Yet many retirees withdraw without considering this layer of optimization. There is also the emotional habit of anchoring to a single number. Whether it is 4% or any other rule, it can become overly rigid. Flexibility tends to outperform rigidity in uncertain environments. Now let us talk about how to gently correct these patterns. Start by defining a comfortable spending range instead of a fixed number. This allows for adjustment without feeling like you are breaking your plan. Next, schedule periodic reviews rather than reacting to daily market movements. This creates distance between emotion and decision-making. You can also separate essential and discretionary spending more clearly. This gives you confidence about what must be protected and what can adapt. Another helpful adjustment is building small buffers rather than large restrictions. A modest cash reserve can reduce the need for difficult decisions during downturns. It creates space, which often matters more than precision. Finally, allow your plan to evolve as your confidence grows. Many retirees become more comfortable adjusting spending after real experience. That shift is not failure. It is learning through lived reality. In the next section, we will bring everything together into a practical framework, so you can see how these ideas translate into a calm and flexible retirement plan. Because clarity often comes not from more rules, but from better structure. And once that structure feels right, the numbers start to feel less overwhelming. You prepared carefully for what lies ahead, and you are allowed to feel ease along the way. We often believe a good plan must be complex, but clarity usually comes from simple structure. A practical withdrawal framework begins by securing your essential expenses first. This can come from guaranteed income sources or highly stable assets. Once that base is covered, the remaining portfolio becomes more flexible and adaptable. Next, define a spending range instead of a single rigid withdrawal number. For example, you might allow spending to move within a comfortable band each year. This creates freedom without removing structure from your financial decisions. Then, align your withdrawals with your actual lifestyle phases. Higher activity years may justify higher spending, while quieter years may naturally cost less. This reduces the pressure to force consistency where it does not naturally exist. Another key step is building in small adjustment rules ahead of time. For example, modest reductions during downturns can be planned rather than improvised. This makes difficult moments feel expected rather than alarming. It also helps avoid large emotional reactions that can disrupt long-term stability. You may also choose to review your plan once or twice a year instead of constantly. This creates a rhythm that balances awareness with emotional distance. Over time, this rhythm becomes a quiet source of confidence. Now let us bring together a simple layered model many retirees find helpful. Layer 1 is your income floor, covering essential living costs with stable sources. Layer 2 is your flexible spending portfolio, adjusted based on performance and needs. Layer 3 is your long-term growth allocation, designed to support future years. Each layer serves a purpose, reducing the burden on any single decision. This structure is not about maximizing returns, it is about sustaining a balanced life. Because retirement is not a math problem to solve once, but a life to live continuously. It is also helpful to think in probabilities instead of certainties. No strategy can eliminate risk completely, but it can reduce the likelihood of severe outcomes. That shift in thinking often reduces anxiety more than any specific number. Another quiet benefit of structure is that it supports better conversations with family. Clear plans make expectations visible and reduce misunderstandings over time. This can be especially important when financial decisions affect more than one generation. At this stage, many retirees notice something unexpected. The fear of running out of money slowly shifts into a question of how to use it meaningfully. That shift marks a deeper transition from accumulation to intentional living, and it often brings a different kind of clarity. In the final section, we will step back and reframe what a successful withdrawal strategy really means. Because success is not only about lasting longer, but also about feeling fully lived. And that perspective changes how every number in your plan begins to feel. You prepared responsibly for the years ahead, and you are still allowed to experience them fully. We often measure success in retirement by how long money lasts, but that is only part of the story. A strategy can be technically perfect and still leave life feeling restricted or unfinished. So a better question may be whether your withdrawals support the life you actually want to live. Because money is not the goal, it is the tool that allows certain experiences to exist. This is where many retirees begin to gently shift their perspective. Instead of asking how little they can spend, they begin asking what feels meaningful to spend on. That does not mean abandoning discipline, but it does mean redefining what discipline supports. For some, it means prioritizing time with family while health still allows it. For others, it means finally exploring interests that were postponed during working years. And for many, it simply means feeling less anxious about every small financial decision. A thoughtful withdrawal strategy should create that space, not remove it. Because constant restriction can quietly turn into a different kind of loss. At the same time, structure remains important because it protects against avoidable risks. The balance is not between spending and saving, but between intention and fear. When intention leads, decisions tend to feel clearer and more consistent. When fear leads, even good decisions can feel uncertain and heavy. That is why the best strategies often feel simple once they are understood. They are not trying to predict everything. They are designed to respond calmly over time. They allow adjustments without turning every change into a crisis. And they leave room for life to unfold in ways that cannot be planned precisely. If there is one idea to carry forward, it is this. A sustainable retirement is not built on rigid rules, but on flexible clarity. Clarity about what matters, what can change, and what must be protected. Once those are defined, the specific strategy becomes easier to manage. You no longer need a perfect answer, only a steady and thoughtful direction. And that direction can evolve as your life continues to unfold. Because retirement is not a fixed destination, it is an ongoing experience. And your relationship with money can soften as confidence gradually replaces fear. So if your plan feels imperfect, that may not be a problem at all. It may simply mean it is realistic enough to live with. And in the end, that is what makes a strategy truly sustainable. You planned carefully for the future, and you are also allowed to live gently in the present.